to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to our second ordinary meeting of January for the Board of Trustees for the Village of Ballston Spa. A reminder for those wondering about public comment session number 1 on Zoom. This is a great time if you have a public comment to make sure you get your hand raised for that time as we begin by approving minutes. Can I get a motion that the minutes of January 8th, 2024's meeting be approved? Trustee Fondainza. Trustee Price Bush, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. No presentations tonight. And we're going to move to public comment and agenda items only. I will tell you that there will be 5 other motions tonight, 4 of which all are kind of interlinked. It is to accept resignations of Arts Committee members Kate Van Buren and Katie Tiedemann, and to approve and appoint Chris Hannon and Pat Burnham as new members of the Committee on the Arts. Those are 4 right there. The 5th one is related to our labor agreement, or labor attorney agreement, excuse me, with Romer, Wallens, Gold, and Minot, just to extend that. And the trustees received that in their email earlier today. This is something that actually slipped through the cracks, and I was reminded recently by Elaine Gold, our lead attorney, and we want to make sure we get that signed up as we are in DPW contract mode coming up very soon. So having said that, public comment on agenda items only, 3 minutes per speaker. Anybody in the room that would like to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing none. Anybody on Zoom? Going once, going twice? No sale. Let's move on to the actual motions. There is no consent agenda tonight, but we'll move on to regular motions. To accept, first off, the resignation of Tricia Hasbrook as Deputy Clerk effective January 26, 2024.
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fondainza.
Second.
Trustee Raymond, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion to accept the resignation of Tricia Hasbrook as Deputy Registrar of Vital Statistics effective January 26, 2024?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fondainza.
I'll second.
Trustee Price Bush, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion to approve the promotion of Rebecca Little to full-time employment, including the roles of Deputy Clerk, Deputy Treasurer, and Deputy Registrar of Vital Statistics, at a salary of $52,500 per year, effective immediately. Note the salary is not intended to be increased in the fiscal year 24-25 budget, scheduled to be effective on June 1st, 2024.
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fondainza.
I'll second.
Trustee Perez Bush, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion appointing Rebecca Little as Deputy Clerk effective immediately?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fondainza.
Second.
Trustee Raymond, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion appointing Rebecca Little as Deputy Registrar of Vital Statistics effective immediately?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fondainza.
I'll second.
Trustee Baskin, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion authorizing the Committee on the Arts to reallocate $1,400 within the existing arts budget from the Arts Walk and Plein Air program to a T-shirt tie-dye project and a random acts of poetry event?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fondainza, Trustee Baskin, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion scheduling a public hearing related to proposed local law number 1 of 2024 to add chapter 150 parks to the code of the Village of Ballston Spa on February 12, 2024 at 7:01 p.m. at the regularly scheduled meeting of the Village of Ballston Spa Board of Trustees?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fondainza, Trustee Price Bush, discussion.
So we've had multiple suggestions for small edits, and we haven't seen a final version.
Correct. 4 of us have sent in edits. I've compiled them. I'm creating a Google document with all of them going section by section saying always requested to be changed. And we'll send that out to everybody to give at a Google sheet, basically a Google document, their yes or no on those things. And on Friday, hand it to Carla for a final revision on it. based on consensus on those different pieces that are now being recommended to be fixed, changed, whatever.
With the sidewalk law, we did this setup where we approved a public hearing with the idea that there might be some amendments or changes to the sidewalk law, but then we were told, no, we can't do that between meetings. I mean,
Well, that was a timing issue. We have 3 weeks between meetings this time, correct? Is
so
that?
we can,
Yes.
we can make changes. And what, we're gonna vote on the final
not-
version?
No, you're not voting on it. What you're doing is you're setting a public hearing, which won't happen for another 3 weeks. You have the draft, and then you've all looked at the draft and provided comments, and we're just compiling them and putting them together. And that'll be the one that goes out to everybody by consensus of the board.
Consensus of the board, so there's not a vote, but we all have to basically agree that that's the final version.
Well,
Well, yes, the final version to go to public hearing, not the final version. That's the one that goes to public hearing, and then the public has the opportunity to review it.
there could be a change from a public hearing that we determined that night and say, okay, well, we're gonna have to send it back out for an edit and go to another public hearing at that point in time. So
We did this with a couple, your official year law, you did this as well. Because a lot of the changes are non-substantive changes that have been proposed, and a lot of them are the same changes. So this just puts it on for the public hearing. If that's not what you want to do, that's fine. You don't have to. You can wait until you actually see the final version, and then at the meeting on February 12th, you can schedule a public hearing, but it would have to be, the public hearing would be 2 weeks later.
I mean, do we want to quickly go through these minor changes?
not really.
I haven't looked at them. I've been away since Friday, so I haven't looked at any of the ones you guys put down. It's up to you.
I don't, they are minor changes for the most part. I guess, our ability to work together has been challenging. So, I guess we can try it again, and then we'll see in our next board meeting if that worked or not. I hope it can work. But again, there's nothing like life or death changes here, but
No, I think most of us are actually mostly on the same page, like comments that you made, and Frank, I actually really kept mine very truncated to the things that I thought were pretty important, just for clarity and whatnot, but I think we're really close, honestly, so.
A lot of clerical or quasi-clerical kind of stuff and whatnot, so we should be good to go. And like I said, just look for the Google Doc to come out and give your comments to each point. And like I said, I'll be going basically chronological down the law, or, right
Right,
down.
you have my
section by section.
comments.
I have your comments, Bernadette's, mine, Mary. If there's anything else, Sean, watch, you still got time.
I've reviewed it, and you guys pretty much covered the bases, so.
the one thing that might be worth discussing in public now is like, who sets the park hour laws? Because we seem to have a difference on that, and, it's my opinion, that should just be part of this law, that we would set those hours like we're doing everything else in the regs.
The
for the
attorney
parks.
has a view on this.
I have a thought on this only because I'm writing the same law in a different municipality, changing it from the board to the rec director.
Mhm.
Because if you have it set, and they have found this to be an issue, in the law there, and we can put that here, is that the board sets the hours by resolution. However, the rec director, and here it would be the DPW superintendent, the rec director reserves the right or receives the designation from the board to change those in the best interest of the park. And I don't remember the language, but because the issues were weather related, why are we keeping
Right.
this open? Why are we staffing it if nobody's gonna be there? That was a big rec
Yep.
park, but that is how it was. The hours are X to X. Then they had to change that 2 years ago to the hours are set by resolution by the board. And now they're coming into, well, that's too confining. So let's kind of make this, the board sets it, but the rec director, DPW superintendent, has the right to change it.
Yeah, I started thinking the same thing, like the board sets the regular hour, maybe just sunrise, sunset or whatever, but
I think that's what they have.
it can be changed for special circumstances by DPW
But
or the
not,
mayor or.
yeah, it would be who's in charge, whoever's in charge of the parks,
Right.
really. And it wouldn't be upon approval of the board, because then that
Right.
would.
No, that's
that would
fine,
take it.
but
So-
the board is basically gonna set the standard, the routine hours.
Right,
Okay,
right, but
that's
then
fine.
the DPW superintendent, at least in this other municipality, the DPW superintendent would then say, you know what, we're not gonna open the ice rink, or we're
No,
not.
that's
gonna
fine,
do
that's
this, we're
fine.
not
I have
gonna
no
do that.
problem with that.
That's
I didn't
something,
want to delegate the whole thing out, but that makes sense what you're saying.
but that's just something I'm doing in a different municipality, so I'll
Well,
do whatever.
does that
this
make
folks
sense to
want.
people here?
I think I can live with that. I generally don't think we need to be in that deep in I think I'm maybe the one who's been objecting to our involvement of deciding hours. Mainly because we have so many other things we need to focus on that I think that really we can trust Jeff to decide hours for our parks. And generally, they've always been dusted on anyways, as far as I remember. I think it even still says it in Kelly Park's gates, but I think that makes sense if we that's fine with me. I can concede to that as long as we are giving Jeff that power to make those adjustments where necessary. So
One of my globals was there are several instances where approval by the village board is likely an overreach. Either the clerk, the mayor, or the village police, DPW could be in there too, should have some level of approval in those instances. Since board action won't always be timely, we could review this on paragraph by paragraph basis, Carla, if you feel it useful. But let me kind of get this onto a full sheet right now.
Yeah, that's fine. And that, what they're doing in the other village or town makes sense to me.
I'll send you that language.
Yeah, I think actually the DPW superintendent would appreciate some guidance as to setting the hours. Obviously with the ability to modify those as needed. Also, I would assume the hours would depend on the park. I mean, folks are in Wiswall Park after dark, you know, if they're in the downtown area. So I don't, you know, whereas Kelly Park, that's in a different area and has a different purpose. So
that, you're right, that should be in the, well, I guess what we said, the way it was written is, we're not putting the hours in the law. We're just saying the board is going to determine the hours and can change them from time to time.
Right, just like any fee schedule, don't put a time schedule in either,
Right.
because then you're gonna have to go change the law every time you want to change them.
So maybe when the law is passed or whatever, we can have a motion to say, okay, Kelly Park, the hours are, Wiswall Park, the normal hours are, right? Or have a whole piece of paper that has the schedule.
Yep.
Okay.
Call the question, all in favor of scheduling the public hearing? Opposed? Motion carries. Got to get a motion to adopt the Village of Ballston Spa ADA Public Streets and Sidewalks Plan with changes to eliminate a reference to City Council, changing it to Village Board of Trustees, and changing the math done related to the village's goal per year for sidewalk work.
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fandesa,
I'll second.
trustee Price Bush, discussion. So I did send those over to Chris, and he's making Chris Round from Labella, he's making those changes that I just listed out. He's going to be 0.69 miles per year is what he landed at, and fixing the Village Board of Trustees, City Council reference there as well.
All right, so discussion, you ready?
Yeah.
So why are we changing from 0.75 or to 0.69?
He's going back to 11 as the denominator, and 11 divided into the number of miles that were listed was 0.69. So the math was always a little bit skewed using 11-year schedule.
Right.
So what's the purpose of 11?
Well, since you quizzed Jeff on that today, I'll give you the answers he and I discussed afterward. How's that? The answer is because we are actually stated in here that we should be using our infrastructure replacement repair schedule alongside it to get work done. And so knowing that our worst case scenario is 11 years in that situation for all streets in the village for pavement and repavement purposes, that would put us alongside that in its entirety. And when you look at practicality of number of miles generally anyway, that seems to be a pretty good number with respect to what you can assume we would be able to get done per year in the first place using normal methodologies. So it kind of makes sense. Doesn't mean we're not going after some of the worst situations up front. It's just saying, hey, here's what we have as an infrastructure schedule, and we will utilize it in some format or another, and that would put us on at worst the 11-year track.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between 10 or 11 is irrelevant. I guess my point is, as I made before, I don't see a reason with syncing it up with a paving plan, because one has absolutely nothing to do with the
It
other.
actually states in here that they advise us to do that, actually, it's in there.
I understand they advise us from a complete streets point of view, but again, there isn't any positive benefit from syncing the two up, and we're not required to. So I would think that the prioritization would be A, what's in the report, and then B, worst category 4s, and then category 3s, since those are the most inaccessible of the different categories we have. And that may not necessarily link up with our paving plan. And also the priority list shows the downtown area, which also may not link up with our paving plan. So I don't see the purpose for linking the two together, because we're not getting funding from CHIPS to do sidewalks. and
Actually,
curb ramps.
yeah, and remember, this is not the sidewalk repair program, this is an ADA program. And so those sidewalk ramps are actually one of the major portions of it. So CHIPS is actually contributing to portions of this.
Of the curb, right? Yeah, but again, the sidewalks themselves that aren't compliant, obviously that would be the adjacent property owner under the code. So I would think we want to address the worst case scenarios and the worst locations. Since we have every location categorized by address, it's wouldn't really be a heavy lift to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Sean, obviously he's the expert, but, it does say in this plan, both, it said utilizing the prioritization method detailed above, the village will provide notice of needs, sidewalk repair starting. So prioritizing method above is the 1 through 4, where's the worst. Later, we say the village currently endeavors to provide maintenance, repair, paving of local streets in 11-year cycle. Village may choose to coordinate these efforts with pedestrian facility repairs. But I mean, what Sean's saying is right. If they don't correspond, it doesn't have a lot of rationale to follow the street cycle if that doesn't correspond with the sidewalk need piece. I don't know what's added by, it sounds like from what Sean has said, there's no value added to following the street piece. And in fact, it's not according to priority of what's worse.
The value would be is if we knew our plan 1 year ahead, and then you could do the sidewalks and the curb ramps ahead of time, so that there isn't a conflict with the paving. That would be certainly a way to handle it. So if we knew 2 years out what our paving schedule was and what were the worst case scenarios, category 3 and 4, that would be probably the best opportunity to do it then. That way it doesn't interfere with with a paving schedule. Because that's the one thing I'm fearing is you're gonna have people doing sidewalks and it's gonna conflict with schedule. And then if they end up doing it after the paving and they tear the sidewalk up, there's potential to damage the new pavement because they're gonna put it in the street.
The approach that is being considered in general for sidewalks is figuring out which roads we're paving by May 1st, sending out 90-day notices for the sidewalks in disrepair on that street, and then hopefully having a better reimbursement loan approach and best bids ready for them ultimately, for that to not be a hammer to those that are in need of those repairs. So giving basically 3 months time to get the repairs done and work with them alongside that, so that the sidewalks are done in time for paving in that situation, and also the curbing or the ramp, that are required by CHIPS would be done alongside it, so that we wouldn't be double counting that and charging a homeowner for a ramp section of his sidewalk that they didn't ramp, but we do it, or they ramp it for us, whatever. At least we'd be there to take care of that for them at that point in time. So it's basically buttressing with a general approach and methodology. And again, there's nothing preventing us from taking the worst of the worst except for resources and time, which, you know, they talk to Jeff any given day, and that's always the challenge for him with, you know, his staff and his folks.
Yeah,
Snowstorm
but-
that comes.
In our current methodology of repairing sidewalks, he has very little to do with it except to haul away any debris that is created and an overview to make sure that it's been done according to our standards. He's gonna have to do that, whether it's on the street he's paving or another street. Again, I don't see any correlation or benefit. I actually only see negative construction conflicts with trying to sync it with a paving plan.
He actually liked the thing when we discussed it further after he talked to you. Roll call vote.
All right, wait, I got another issue.
Well, let's go.
The other piece that I thought,
The grievance policy. I'll help you. Here.
no, well, before that is page 3. It feels like the wording was weakened.
It's not a carbon copy of the code is what the answer
No, I
is.
know, but before we had the village is responsible for notification and enforcement of non-ADA compliant property owners, and we crossed that out and we put in, under this provision, the village may notice a deficient condition and require action by the landlord. If it's an action by the landlord, the village may opt to perform the work the landlord's cost expense. So those words may, I don't know why we would use the word may and not shall. I mean, shall is in the law now, and I would hope we wouldn't back away from that imperative that, you know, or we'll never get our sidewalks fixed.
As stated on the email this weekend, and this is why we try to talk via emails to avoid having to be repetitive 15 times. This is a plan. This is not our code. And the plan is just giving you references to small things inside the code. And to put shalls and mays in different places is not representative necessarily of what the code is saying. So the code is the code. Ultimately, the code is what controls the village. This is a plan that's giving you general guidance as to what our policies and goals are moving forward. This is not code.
I understand. I guess I'm wondering, what was the motivation for crossing that out and putting in May?
Chris, after your discussion, made the changes.
Oh,
and
he did that?
yes. These all came
But it must
from
have been in
him.
response to some conversation because he
You
already.
were a party to the conversation. He made the changes before we had even gotten to our virtual meeting that Friday. He had a list of changes.
So do you understand why they were put in? Why was it changed?
Yes, basically, he's understanding that given what the realities of how we handle sidewalks aren't here, that wording was appropriate to protect the village and not create a liability standard that doesn't necessarily exist in all cases. Because if you read the code, it's a bit of a mess because it's not clear if I could overrule the board with respect to a defective sidewalk or vice versa. So that's why may and shall is actually probably a conundrum in the first place there. So the word may is appropriate because that is accurate with respect to a plan that's talking about an amorphous code scenario. And it's not creating a worry about liability standards over and above.
I'm surprised he would make that change without prompting. I don't understand why he would do that. The code is pretty clear in terms of the shall statements.
Keep
The-
walking through the rest of the wording there, Ben. I've walked you through it twice now.
Let's see, whenever any said, it was from the code, whenever any said sidewalk or curbing shall, in the opinion of the mayor and the board of trustees, be deemed by them to be unsafe or in a state of disrepair, the mayor and the board of trustees shall so notify said adjacent landowner and direct said landowner to replace or repair any such sidewalk or curbing. And then the other piece is upon the failure of any adjacent landowner to replace or repair defective or unsafe sidewalk and occurring within 30 days of receipt of written notice pursuant to subsection B, the village blah shall replace or repair any such sidewalk and or curbing, and the cost shall be added to the next succeeding text. So that seems straight, but I guess I don't agree
That's fine.
with
You don't have to.
changing it to, I don't understand why Chris, he submitted a plan that he was happy with, and he would go on his own and change the wording from a very straightforward statement, which is an accurate statement. The village is responsible for notification enforcement of non-ADA compliant property owners. Seems very straightforward and clear.
And what's your last grievance?
The last, I wouldn't call it a grievance,
Well,
but
it's,
I do.
the wording was purposeful there. Your grievance is not a grievance. You want grievances to be emailed.
Yes, I'd like to add
I'm
that
helping
people can email a a grievance, not just mail it.
Correct. And as I said, Nimer was in my office, Henry Vandenhever was in my office, and we even had issues with our use of the defect complaint form that's on the website that's basically emailed out. And after discussion about that specific one, he was okay leaving that one alone. They are not comfortable with email notices generally because they could get spammed and start a clock unintentionally without anybody knowing. They could go to the wrong party, or the party that should be receiving it doesn't ever get it. So the process they prefer is that the clerk receives it, timestamps them officially so that everybody's on the same page with no discrepancies of when receipt occurs under that system. That is just Nimer, our insurer, telling us flat out, this is the methodology that should be used to limit liability and risk. That
I
was
guess I
during
feel-
our annual risk assessment that Henry does.
I guess I feel like we're in the 1990s when we're not doing email. I feel like we need to make things user friendly, especially for people who might have a disability, and not make them go get an envelope and a stamp and things where they can't even necessarily navigate the sidewalk in the first place. I know email is used at every level of government as official correspondence at this point, and I think it could be managed. And so I would urge us to, in 2024, to include email as a viable option for communication. It's just so
Ben,
much
can you
easier.
email a notice of a lawsuit to somebody?
I don't know.
No, you can't, because it starts a legal liability clock, and that's why they won't do it that way. That's why it has to be personally received. When you're receiving a grievance of this nature, you are essentially receiving what could be the start of a lawsuit scenario. And that's why it's being managed in that manner, the same manner as a lawsuit at the end of the day. That's why it has to be very cautious and careful, and that's what his concerns were generally. I'm just trying to help you out here to understand why he's sitting in my office telling me these things. As a lawyer, I get it. As a lawyer, I think you get it ultimately. And even the defect complaint form, which is more or less there as kind of a, hey, something wrong, let us know what it is type thing. He was concerned that would start up a possible prior written notice scenario, but understood that it actually had more worth for us because we're sending it to 4 people and making sure it gets a response or handled in that situation effectively, in which the answer is in sidewalk case, specifically that was his concern. It's not the village's direct problem per se. It's a landowner's problem. And that's where we notify in that situation. That's the only reason why he was willing to tolerate that and did write us up for that one specifically.
And how is
But this
that
is going-
different than
Because this is a legal grievance process, ultimately, the way it's being written out here. This is the next step, and this is more
No,
efficient.
but how is the form different?
I just said this grievance form is the next step officially. This is an official grievance policy. Defect complaint form is not an official policy of the Village of Ballston Spa. It's just there as communication method. This is a grievance methodology written out as a part of a plan as accepted by the village as a way to grieve.
I think it'll only be a matter of time before we add email to everything. All right. I don't think it's very user friendly, but
Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Baskin?
aye.
Trustee Van Denza?
Yes.
Trustee Price Bush?
Yes.
And Trustee Raymond?
Yes.
Mayor Rossi?
Yes, thank you. Let me skip I for a second. Let me just go and do the other 5 motions. 6 motions. Sorry, I forgot about that one. I printed yours out specifically so I wouldn't do that. Yep. You want me to
We need a motion to declare the Board of Trustees lead agency under seeker for local law 1 of 2024.
It disappeared, actually. I printed that. It's not there. That's weird, because you're right, it was there. Right? Can I have a motion to declare the Board of Trustees lead agency under seeker for local law, proposed local law number 1 of 2024?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fandesa,
I'll second.
trustee Baskin, discussion? Roll call or no? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We get the other motions quickly here. Can I get a motion approving the entry into an agreement with Romer, Wallens, Gold, and Minot to provide labor, attorney, and other legal services to the Village of Ballston Spa, and authorizing the mayor to execute such agreement? Trustee Fandesa,
Second.
trustee Price Bush, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion accepting resignation of Katie Tiedemann from the Committee on the Arts?
Make the motion.
Trustee Baskin,
Second.
trustee Fandesa, discussion?
We thank Katie for
Amen.
all her work and
Yeah.
that she's stepping up, but thankful for her time.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion accepting resignation of Kate Van Buren from the Committee on the Arts?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fandesa,
Second.
trustee Baskin, discussion?
Thank you, Kate.
Yes, thank you, Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion appointing Chris Hannon to the Committee on the Arts to fill the position vacated by Katie Tiedemann? This provides him a full 3-year term until not to end earlier than December 31st, 2026.
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fandesa,
I'll second.
trustee Baskin, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion appointing Pat Burnham to the Committee on the Arts for a term that is not to end earlier than December 31st, 2024?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fandesa,
I'll second.
trustee Baskin, discussion. And just so you know, we figured out what terms were affected. We went with who came in first as a requested replacement. Obviously, Pat Burnham can be extended starting next year, but we're just fulfilling terms the way they're supposed to be fulfilled here. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I mean, now that that's over, are we still doing the 90-second thing for new motions? Not that I need to.
No, only because we included a notification of it before the public comment session. That's why I did that earlier.
You include a notification before the public comment section.
Because we've given an opportunity for discussion on that at that point in time. That's what we've generally done as a loose policy here.
Okay.
And usually we're not doing groundbreaking motions in that scenario. So that's why we kind of summarize it ahead of time. Can I get a motion disallowing an individual member of the Board of Trustees, except for the mayor or a member or members authorized by the mayor, from directing consultant or employee of the village without board authorization?
I'll make the motion.
Trustee Fandesa,
I'll second.
trustee Price Bush, discussion.
So I guess what is directing a consultant? Because I think any board member should be able to request information from a consultant.
That's not a necessarily a directing of consultant. We have things like do this, do that for people that charge us hourly. That's a different question.
So if it's outside of the scope of a work of an assigned task.
Or it's an additional assigned task. That's not normal.
Well, that would require board approval anyways, if it means more money.
Well, we have ongoing retention agreements per se, and so that's where it gets blurred, I think.
Well,
So-
I don't know, when we ask for a task from a consultant, there's budget, they have to come up with a proposal and that needs board approval. So
So
I guess
this,
I don't understand what this is.
I'll tell you what this is about. This motion is a direct response to my request to Labella on Thursday night to provide a track changes document version of the ADA plan so that the whole board would know what changes are being made in the ADA plan, because the whole board had not been apprised of that. And they were the ones that we were told were revising the 8A plan, so they're the ones to ask for track changes. I do not consider that a big ask or difficult to ask. I don't consider it a directing them in any kind of significant activity. Requesting information from a consultant, I don't think is directive when that information exists. If we had that information from you, Frank, or anyone else on the board, we wouldn't have asked the consultant, but the consultant's the only one who had it, and it was time sensitive. So I think that's perfectly reasonable course of action, and if we need to ask a consultant for information that's not provided, I think that's okay.
Ben, your email was inflammatory, using a word you like to use a lot. It basically accused me of delaying things, dragging my feet, et cetera. When we set up a meeting after I sent an email to the entire board and Chris Brown and others, denoting what the sidewalk policies are in the village versus what was reflected in the plan. At that point, we had our meeting, our discussion on the last Monday meeting we had. Chris, on his own volition, began making changes based on what he didn't realize necessarily our policies were or our code was at that point in time. Carla, Bernadette, and I jumped on a virtual meeting with Carrie Ward and Chris Brown the same day we had done the BOA interviews. And from that, we believed that he was going to finish up any changes he had left at that point and send them within a couple of days. Well, we didn't get them in a couple of days. And you basically are blaming me for this, that, and the other thing without even talking to the board first, and then demanding of a consultant who was working to get us the changes, this, and that about getting out track changes and everything else. And this is not unusual, unfortunately, in this whole governance of our municipality. And this is unusual in general with respect to governance in municipalities. Normally you have points of contact. If there was something you wanted specifically, ask the mayor, get a consensus from the board so that we have kind of a unified, okay, we're going to spend possibly money to do X, Y, or Z, and we'll push it over to him. But this mayor was obviously trying to finish this. And honestly, you should have read the whole thing anew anyway. You should have, because
I did, but the track changes is perfectly reasonable.
But
First
he provided a summary on his own
it did not.
without you asking for one. And
I did ask for one.
well, he did it on his own. It wasn't even a
Right.
question of him doing that.
It didn't include all the changes that were a track change. So you've mischaracterized my email as a perfectly reasonable email. Secondly, the only thing I asked
Okay,
for,
President Trump.
the only thing I asked for was I wouldn't bring in the name Trump to your administration here, Frank, because I'm not quite as Trumpian as some other people in this room. Anyway, it was a very simple, it was a single request. It was in response to the fact that you said Thursday night that the consultant has the form and he's going to send us a change. If you had said you or Bernadette have the form, I would have said, oh, can one of you please send us the track changes? But you didn't have it, he had it. And you know what, track changes is a very helpful thing to have to not waste everyone's time, to know what the changes are. And if you're implying that kind of information be withheld, then you're impeding our ability to do our jobs and to include the whole board in decision-making. Asking a simple request for track change document to know what's going on is perfectly reasonable.
Again, this is the last straw of many of these situations, unfortunately, and that's why this is at this point necessary. And then to adding Chris Brown and Kerry Ward back into the email chain when they were taken off by me to call me all kinds of things that you shouldn't have, essentially was the height of disrespect for the whole process.
So of course you exaggerate and deform the interaction. You disrespected me before I responded. And so you are a king of disrespect.
I took everybody that wasn't from our village.
In fact, you add people when you're getting angry and want to say something obnoxious.
Roll call.
So, well,
I'd like to say something. It seems that this is more about the interaction between you two than actually the interaction between board members and the consultant. And I'd hate to see the lack of free flow of information because you guys had an uncomfortable exchange of emails.
Carl, how is it usually working in other municipalities, out of curiosity, in terms of direction to consultants and those that are usually outside?
For consultants, it's generally the point of contact is the mayor or the supervisor and the clerk or the confidential secretary. And then if a board member, like for example, for me, if a board member asks me to do something, I respond and copy the entire board and say, I've been asked to do this. Is that what the board wants?
And that would have been the protocol if we had time and the consultant we weren't directed to the consultant as the owner of the property. The other thing that happens, Frank, is you have a long history of withholding and delaying the disbursement of information. So there's some times where it's timely to get information, you're not sharing it. And I think that impedes our ability to do our job. And I think we're within our rights to then go to the source of the information. Sean, you had some amendment you wanted to add.
Well, I thought maybe we should just amend it to be more clear. You know, we could amend it. We can request information and data, board members, associated with assigned tasks by the board, but cannot direct them to do work outside of the scope of the assigned task. So in the situation you're talking about, he did the work as part of the assigned task. So this falls into data information, which any board member should be able to request.
That's
I mean,
not for an hourly, Sean. Hourlies don't work
If
that
he
way.
had already done the work, we're just requesting work that was
He already
part
had
of the
it.
assigned task.
Yeah.
Okay, you're suggesting an amendment?
Yeah. I would-
Okay, who had the motion?
I don't accept.
Okay, roll call.
Trustee Baskin,
No.
trustee Von Denza,
Yes.
trustee Price Bush, trustee Raymond,
No,
Mayor Rossi.
Yes. 3-2.
And I just like to
Motion-
say,
motion carries.
I will continue to talk to consultants if I feel like I need information that you're not giving us.
Between you and the ethics code ultimately, because.
Yeah,
it's
it will,
policy
because in
now.
the ethics code, it says you can't impede our ability to do our job.
Mayor's announcements. You need anything else, probably? Oh. I think this would probably be the right spot to do. Motion for, yep. Gotta get a motion, selecting Labella Associates to be the chosen or selected firm for the Brownfield Opportunity Area nomination.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nomination study.
Are
Study.
you presenting a notice of award to Labella Consultants in response to the RFP for the BOI?
can I get a motion for that? You can see this is well thought out today. Trustee Fandesa has the motion. Trustee Price Bush, discussion.
So
That's
we
really
need
good.
90 seconds here, right? It's part of the.
Yes, we do. So 90-second opportunity for any public comment with respect to that butchered motion that was just made. Anybody in the room? Anybody on Zoom? Mike? Yep. Just turn that on, Mike. I think it's off currently. Anybody else? Turn the camera on you and you'll be good to go. Yep.
Thank you. Mike, Lucci, 9 Russell Street. Just if you could, before taking a vote, give a little bit of an explanation as to what this is all about, because I have no idea.
Sure,
Thank you.
yeah, I was hoping that opportunity. The village was awarded a grant from this Department of State for a brownfield area opportunity. I'm gonna get,
Brownfield Opportunity Area.
thank you. Nomination study. It's gonna look at the entire village and mostly downtown. I shouldn't say the entire village, but a lot of our downtown. It's gonna look at our properties that may have previous, contamination or perceived Doesn't even have to. So it's going to look at underutilized properties and how we can get them back online, being productive, bringing in tax revenue for this village. And it's, we can, anything dealing with economic development and making our village better, kind of related with that perception of like things, oh, that I can't redevelop that property. It's going to help us with it. It's really actually more flexible than I realized, and it's really helpful. We got 3 applications. We did some interviews, and so far, I think the majority of the board, it was a tough choice. I'm going to put that out there right there. But I think for the majority of the board, Labella came out. It's, you know, they work with us regularly, and, you know, they have a really exceptional background working with small communities like ours with BOAs, and that's.
We get about
stood
90,
out.
I think it's 90% of the fees associated with the consultant work on this. We pay in 10% as the match. And so I think it's about 135-15 split ultimately comes out of this. So it's a lot of work for whoever we choose, clearly. And in the case of having zoning alongside it, it helps allow BOA to inform the zoning, which is something that all 3, I believe it was all 3 of the interviews we did said that was a good and positive thing to have happen. They may have slightly disagree about timing and order necessarily, but they saw it as an opportunity to have zoning going on as to how the approach would best work with the zoning consultants and the BOA consultants working together. So it's interesting education for us as well to go through that. About over 3 hours worth of interviews we had that day. So it's good.
I also watched the interviews. Thanks for having them. And I was left with a couple impressions. I am concerned that the BOA is very development and centered and developer centered. And I am concerned that the BOA should not compromise the zoning. That the zoning actually ideally would come first and the BOA would fit within the zoning. But all these consultants, of course, their only concern is the BOA, and they don't want any impediment, i.e. the zoning, to get in the way. Fish, one of them who's doing our zoning was more flexible in that, but that is a concern that I see. I wouldn't want our zoning to be compromised by the BOA. The other concern I had was this one firm, EDR, actually had a very good plan for public outreach. Like they listed, a half dozen ways to reach the public. The others did not. Instead, they said, we have a very good public relations firm and we will do a great job selling this project. And so that was a little concerning to me. So anyway, those are things I'm going to keep my eye on. All the firms were good. I'm going to tell you, because of the public participation, the strength of that, I actually am leaning towards EDR, but the others would also be fine.
If I may, one of the things I think you may have missed, though, with respect to the questions I was centered on, and Labella, I felt had the best answer with respect to this, was creative ways to utilize BOA for infrastructure funding, for repairs, et cetera, or infrastructure needs. And they gave the best answer as to crafty ways to design your BOA to help engage in those aspects of what you need out there. It was one of them, I would say, I'm not going to name names in this respect. One of them was kind of like, well, yeah, maybe it can. Another was like, okay, you can do studies about that stuff and fit that into it. Labella actually said there are hard and fast ways to get infrastructure money through the BOA process, and they weren't shy on that whole thing. And that was an important part of it. So for as much as you're saying it's developer centric or whatever, I'm actually looking at this as an opportunity to get a bunch of things that are needed by our municipality here done and funded at least in part by the state in that respect. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, Ben, I hear you on the outreach part of it. That's actually really important to me because and honestly, why Labella stood out to me, I saw EDR too, I mean, to be honest, but Labella and Norabella specifically, she worked with a lot of small communities like Scotia, Greenwich, that aren't really super like development heavy communities. I think there's a real push and, certainly as a board, we should encourage this is really make sure that it's for our community. There's no point of doing this if it's not serving the needs of our community. So outreach is super important to me. I know it's important to you. And I think together, we can make sure that we're doing that, that's definitely important.
Mike, aren't you glad you asked that?
Well, I am. 'Cause I'm- Thank you.
Marilyn, come on.
We're still in.
Yeah, we'll give it to you.
Okay,
We'll
quick
give it to
look.
you. No problem.
Can you just explain who was on the committee that made the selection for the 3 responses to the RFP? Secondly, what were the names of the firms that replied for the RFP? And did the RFP indicate a score process that the committee may have followed to rank the response to the RFP? And then I keep hearing this term, BOA informs the zoning. If someone could explain that,
It was explained in
Because
your
I-
committee, actually.
because I thought actually that the village board approved a comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan, as my understanding, informs how you proceed with zoning. Thank you.
So,
Name and address,
yeah,
please.
Name and address, don't forget.
Marilyn Stevenson, 45 West High Street.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at least the process, we put an RFP out there. It's based off what the state says, we kind of follow as prescriptive. We had only 3 respondents sent back, and we decided to interview all of them. The Department of State allows for a municipality to form their committee after a consultant is selected, in part because it is so specific how you form those committees. You have to get approval from the Department of State as well for approving the committee. So basically, it was the board who reviewed. Liz was part of it and helped give some analysis, which was really helpful as far as like looking at their different contracts and who they've worked with. And the RFP does, it's available still online, I believe. It does give a rubric. I know in my notes for when I reviewed the paper copies and everything, I did follow that rubric. Quite honestly, all 3 of them were really excellent. Like they hit all those points, I can show that to you at some point, but at that point, we had 3 applicants, we interviewed them, and I think I can't speak for everybody, but for me, I was hoping to pick someone who meets all the criteria, but best fits our community. So I hope that's helpful.
And just a clarification, so you just said that the entire board were the selecting officials, the reviewing and selecting
Well,
officials?
we're in a
for the
motion.
Response to the.
We're in a motion
RFP?
right now to pick officially.
No, I'm just asking, so the.
This
full board-
motion is to
Yes.
select.
Well, hold on. Yes, everybody had received copies of all the applications that came in.
And everybody is each one of the trustees.
Yes, I made Liz, while she was on there, she had it. Made sure when Mary came on, she had it, but all of them had access to it.
Thank you.
Also for the interview process, I think it'd be hard to get everybody in the same room, but we made sure we videotaped it. And also I put it out to the board, please send your questions, we'll ask them, we want to give them questions. And even after the fact, I asked each of the applicants, would you make yourself available if there are further questions after even those videos? So, yeah, it's.
And
this
who
is
were the
selecting
names of
board.
the firms?
Oh,
that
yeah, sorry.
responded? And what do you mean by the BOA informs the zoning?
I'll take that one in
Yeah.
a second.
These are great questions. It was EDR, which used to be Elon. They've merged, so I think they just stuck with EDR. Fisher, which is doing our zoning, as you know, and Labella.
Thank you.
With respect
Oh,
to,
no, I'm sorry.
good pick up, don't worry,
Okay, good.
it's right down there anyway. BOA informing zoning, it's not some way to subvert the comprehensive plan in principle. It is not. It's the idea that inside your comprehensive plan, you identify blights and properties or zones that needed to be handled. and that's partially married by the BOA. And so the question becomes, how do you handle that specifically in the BOA sites? Do you, for instance, use an overlay district with BOA on top of zoning for that general area and then an overlay for it? Do you do a self-executing PUDD perhaps, where you kind of already in the zoning approve a PDD approach for that BOA zone? Do you just write into the zoning code specific zoning for that piece of the map and create that zone? That's what the
Thank you.
informing part is, and that's what we're trying to convey back when to your committee, is that idea of there is overlap. There it certainly is, and the question is, what's the best methodology to embrace that? That's not an end run around this comprehensive plan in any way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but it is something to keep our eye on. And one of the firms said the best thing to do is have really good zoning versus, I think all the firms said, well, the overlay is probably not the best approach.
Right. They actually were recommending writing into the actual zoning code when
Right.
given the opportunity to do it. Again, we're not the professionals on that one, but it was pretty unanimous in that respect from what they said. Liz, go ahead.
Liz Cormos, 89 High. I just had a question. This BOA area, how large is it? And it's not specific to the properties such as Angelica or Ricketts. So it could conceivably impact the downtown business district.
The map
And-
is reviewed anew at this process. So originally there was a map proposed and approved in principle by the state to award the grant. Now, the process of having a consultant and the next steps with the committee and everything else is in the nomination process, essentially expanding the map or contracting it accordingly to make sure that it's being comprehensive for everything that's needed. So it is not unusual, according to the interviews we did, for that map to change, and sometimes remarkably, depending on what's identified.
And to be clear, that map is adjusted with public input, with data from like economic studies. It's not just done willy-nilly. And it's the main thing is just gotta be contiguous for, you know, us to be able to.
It could be equivalent to the downtown business district, and that's where I see that there's got to be coordination with the zoning, because the zoning is looking at the whole village, and, you know, the downtown business district is a key, you know, part of it. And the zoning for that has to, you know, it's not like the BOA is just dealing with specific properties. They're talking about what happens in a pretty significant area of the village. And, you know, that's also concerns me if, you know, there is a push by developers to, you know, to do certain things, which, you know, developers have a right to make a living, and is economically, you know, advantageous to a developer, but it may not be what the residents of this community want. So that's why it's the public input is very important.
Thank you. I feel like we've gone through discussion in this back and forth, and so I prefer roll call, or you want to just go voice overall?
Whatever you want.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mayor's announcements, keeping the minimum because we did have so many motions here in the end, but we did get our, and this will be kind of a merger of Treasurer's Report 2 here. We did get our AUD, or now called AFR document, back from our accountants, and there was something that needs to be fixed on it. It had our property taxes wrong and our water revenues wrong as well, by about the same amount. I think our aggregate revenues were represented correctly, and it was just an apportionment issue. So we're waiting for that to be reevaluated by LGSS, and it showed $4.8 million of fund balance, but that includes $800,000 of purchases done for DBW that are awaiting the USDA loan. I found out today that the dump trucks that will finish that loan process are being moved from a February completion date, which would have been about 1.5 years of equipment wait for that to December of this year, 10 months. I'm hopping on the phone this week with our intermediary Gage to discuss this, because I find that to be a little unusual, since I think we're getting a fire truck built faster than that for what I would call simple or dump truck. Something's not right here. I get the supply chain issues. I get it as much as anybody. I've seen it playing out, but something's strange going on out there, and we want to close this loan very soon.
I know from a state perspective, the day we order it, it's 2 years.
Yeah, that would push us to 2.5 years, and we were before, I think, some of the worst of it, to be honest with you. So how do we fall back in this? Because I do know municipalities that are getting some level of their orders in little by little right now from that period. So why are we at the back of that list? And I'll ask a question. We'll find out the answer. What's the worst they can say? Too bad, so sad. But generally, good financial position, but we obviously have a lot of challenges ahead, including up to $1.7 million to John Street Tower. We've got $2.25 million fire truck, a $900,000 fire truck, both looking to be replaced. One on order right now, the $900,000, $940,000 actually. Obviously, the DPW equipment and a lot of other things that are popping up. $300,000 of that money is ARPA funds that will be utilized for Pulp Street Mill. About $200,000 of it is fire department money that should be moved to reserves. We've got to figure out the final number on that so we can move into that reserve for trucks that we had done last year. So for as high as that number sounds, you start slicing the actual obligations we have, and it ain't so high. And it's something we have to keep in moderation in the back of our minds. And whenever we do a USDA loan, they ask about that size of fund balance, but then we start listing off all those obligations, and we haven't been denied yet because they understand what we're facing, that we have need ultimately. And we also have $450,000 plus probably about $150 maximum for 78 Thompson Street for the new police department. The $150 for renovations puts it around $600,000 that will be borrowing hopefully through USDA as well. So a lot to come here, a lot of pots and pans on the burners here, and we'll see where we go with this. But you know, we're in generally good shape. We've learned from that document, but again, moderation is going to be key moving forward. Trying to find the treasurer's report that I know I had here. Here it is. I got it. Treasurer's report was with the help of Bob Kavanaugh. We were able to finalize the water and sewer billing information this week, add the fees for red meters, and print the bills to be mailed out by February 1st, 2024. The numbers changed slightly, Bob indicated me today, because of some discrepancies in the high users, but aren't very far off of the fact that water total billing was about $500,000 for water, sewer about $140,000. Melissa also talks about the USDA loan paperwork to move forward with the acquisition of the new facility on Thompson Street we're working on. Be moving it forward with 2025 budget development in the next few weeks. She's been working to prepare budget worksheets for department heads. Will be working with me on the budget timeline and the guidelines for budget requests. AFR has been completed, submitted to trustees, obviously waiting a small amendment. And we're waiting for the January 2024 sales tax disbursement. You may have heard in our motions that Rebecca Little, who was our part-time deputy treasurer, has now stepped into a full-time role as our deputy clerk, deputy treasurer, deputy registrar of vital statistics, which normally goes with deputy clerk, as Tricia Hasbrook has found a new job. And we want to thank her for her service to the community and for her time and efforts to get us on the right track over the last year. Rebecca has been just great with us and has been handling her duties very well. And we believe that she has the ability to take on Tricia's duties and her pre-existing duties now in a full-time capacity and knock it out of the park. We're going to be monitoring it because obviously there's 2 times a year in Village Hall that are more or less tough times of year, water and then water taxes in the summertime. And we'll see what we need to do. We'll have a little extra money here by merging the positions to see what we might need to fill in blanks on ultimately, or maybe put some money toward our building department as well, because I know one of the biggest complaints we get is the hours of our building department at times. So we're evaluating what to do, but we're trying to make everything better and work well right now in the village offices, and I'm optimistic that we're gonna make it work. Thanks to Terry for working with Rebecca already to get her into that position. Thanks to Jen for some of the things she's gonna be doing differently. She's gonna actually be in the front of the office now more often than not. So you'll get to see her smiling face up front. And we're gonna have Rebecca and Melissa working in the middle offices together. It's because obviously they're both treasurer and deputy treasurer. A lot of different functions will still be in a treasurer type role throughout the day that she does, Rebecca. So congratulations, Rebecca, and thanks for coming on board with us. Liaison reports, I've had way too much to say here, so Ben, go ahead and start.
All right, Parkin, thank you, and thanks for that interesting information. Park and Tree continues to provide feedback on Studio A on Wiswall design. There are 2 feedback sessions for the public scheduled for this Tuesday and Thursday, 6 p.m. in the library with Judy Esposito, so all are invited to attend. And also they're planning for Arbor Day in April. There'll be some tree planting, more on that in the future. Park and Tree Board's next meeting is February 20th at Cornell Cooperative Extension, 50 West High Street, 7 p.m. All are welcome to attend. The Arts Committee, I want to again extend a warm or a big thank you to Kate and Katie for doing great work on the committee and their dedication, and wish them well. And I'm sure they'll still be around for advice, at least for the new members. The committee is doing some interesting work. They are going to be at Chocolate Fest on February 2nd at DB Trends with an activity book. They are working on something called Random Acts of Poetry. They're going to work with the library and the school district and BSBPA and businesses to promote poetry in many different formats, like leading poems on, in reading areas and inviting people to do poetry and things like that. So that'll be, and that's what that motion was for. And it'll include the whole community, hopefully. They are also planning a tie-dye activity in May with BSBP and the farmers market. They've also on their agenda is talking about ideas. If people haven't heard, there's not going to be a birdhouse project this year. So they are brainstorming other possibilities. So if anyone else has ideas, please share. And their next meeting is February 7th at 7 p.m. at the library.
A lot of overlap, it sounds like, with DSBPA and Arts, but the big thing right now is the Chocolate Fest. Make sure you get there. It's February 2nd. Eat lots of chocolate, spend your money, please.
To-go bags, to-go bags.
Oh yeah, the to-go bags. You don't have to get sick like we did last year.
I didn't get sick.
I got sick.
I
Okay,
just
speak for
felt
myself.
horrible.
My tummy hurt. Let's just put it that way.
We hit every place, literally.
You feel like you have to. I don't know. I only knew chocolate.
100 bottles.
Keep going. Have you got anything else?
No, I'll keep it to that. for
Okay.
now tonight.
Trustee Price Bush, it seems like ever since you've taken over, the library board's meetings have gotten snowed out.
So we're gonna try again. They're gonna hold their meeting tomorrow night, hopefully, weather permitting at 7 p.m. The events task force is in the process of scheduling their events for the upcoming year, and they welcome 2 new members, Victoria and Charlene. So do you guys need more members? Are you taking more members?
We'll find out Thursday or Wednesday.
Make sure you talk right into that microphone, too, just so they hear you out there.
And the Ballston seniors are very active. In addition to Wednesday picnic sessions, dances, and monthly bus trips to shows and dinners, they may add cornhole, scrapbooking, and a garden committee to their activities. So if you're over 55, sounds like a good place to be.
I feel it lately, I'm not gonna lie. Sean, sorry.
I can't go until you say so.
Yeah.
So here's the items completed since the last board meeting. Had to do some extensive repairs to the dump and plow truck and another truck, the Salter. Christmas down and return to storage. Christmas is over, so.
Humbug.
Cleaning and maintenance of well 4A water building, plumbing repairs to library basement level. And school play banners hung up, plow and clean up from the 116 storm. Ice rink for family skating. And I guess the volunteers are gonna spray more on as weather allows. And updated water mapping and Forest Park. And some cleaning and organization of DPW garage. Things that are on their docket. Replace all feed tubing at water treatment building. Chlorine, fluoride, and phosphate. Cut down, remove trees and shrubs in Colonial Hills, the entrance off of Greenfield Ave. And convert old pickup truck to become new flower watering truck. And then replace San Souci well pump building. And repairs and maintenance to trucks and equipment. And that's about it.
One thing we saw, actually two things. We saw a very, very, very conceptual possibility of new DPW garage approach. Not ready for prime time yet because they need a lot more feedback, but we're working to get rid of that eyesore eventually. There was a bid opening with respect to the current state of the garage, the repairs to be done, and we'll get results on that and award officially very soon. Awarding of a bid, is that what? Yeah, I thought so. We were tossing around some interesting ideas too. The potential, maybe we reconfigure Charlton Street to allow for more frontage for the garage land somehow, and things like that. So we're having civil look at that at Labella as a possibility in conjunction with their plans on this. So some interesting ideas, because when else are you gonna be able to get more land over there to accommodate that garage? That was always a tight space. So we'll see where they're able to go with that. And obviously the board will have a lot of say with respect to that once we get to a point where it is a little bit more developed, that type of plan. January 16th storm, you kind of gave a little short strip. I gotta say, that storm was a real problem child storm. It just wouldn't stop. It was one of those starts and just kept going and going and going. And our roads that initial night were some of the best in the area. Your complaint was one I heard from another person that came from Albany that night. The 787 plowed hadn't even touched 787 probably during what was a much inches portion of the storm already. And people were just thrilled to get to our streets and plowed and managed very well. So DPW knocked that storm out of the park for sure.
Yeah, just a stark difference coming from work from Albany. And I know, like as Frank said, many people, it's refreshing. Our DPWs, honestly, an envy in this community. We always have clean streets. Saratoga's a mess. Everywhere else is a mess. Milton's usually pretty good. So very thankful for all their efforts, and they work a lot of time to make sure that we're clean streets and safe.
Thank you, Jeff, Scott, and Glenn, and the entire crew over there for their great work on that one. Bless you, Jennifer. And let's go old business, sidewalk code special meeting. Sean, I think this was yours, right?
Yeah, I know we discussed it late last year, and I know we talked about something in January. Well, January's almost over, so I'd like to try to get something on the calendar, at least an initial one. And again, we corresponded with email. I don't know if it's the initial one is necessary that we have counsel that, because it would be more just trying to figure out what our finance options are, or how we're going to go about it, and obviously establishing maintenance responsibility. I think we're probably headed toward keeping something similar to what we already have. The real thing would be more of the financing.
Couple things here. Once we get through parks, let me kind of get that together and disseminate it to everybody so we can get that code done, because that's been 2 years of waiting on that code. I was going to approach putting out a policy, idea out there. Again, our job is not to write the law. That would be this young lady right here, and what she does for us very well. And we need to let her do that ultimately with what we say. Hey, here's our ideas. Yeah, and that's kind of what happened with parks. And I think it's working right now, what we're doing there. So I wanted to do that. And then maybe that would be a good segue into sitting down and saying, yeah, like it, don't like it, whatever you may feel about it and what to fix. Because I think there's about 4 overarching issues that come into this question, folks. I think there are 4 overarching questions that come into this issue about, how to manage it, the amount of money, gaps, things like that. We've got to kind of take a step back and make sure we're being somewhat comprehensive here with respect to this. It's not going to be perfect, but I think we've got ideas on how to go with this. Started with what we did on the Holy Thursday meeting we had. Was that the one, back one? So yes, I have no objection to a special meeting. I'll tell you, I won't be here for a period in early February, why I'm going to be remote for that meeting on the 12th. So maybe when I get right after I get back from that.
Well, yeah, I think we need to get rolling because whatever outcome, especially the fee schedule and financing, is going to influence our budget.
I also put out a request to Julie Berline, who works with our fire department grants, to see if she was able to identify grants for loan pools and or sidewalks generally, CDBG, for instance, and she's looking into that for us. So we're moving some ideas forward just to see what is out there, what we would qualify for to help this situation too. So yes, again, I agree with you. I think we should move it forward. I will start moving it forward with you on this, especially getting some expert information on this for free for now. And then also getting this scheduled. You want to throw a date out just to aim toward it?
Yeah, I mean,
Let me
obviously.
just my calendar out here, sorry.
I'm in session now with the legislature, so later in the week if possible.
Yeah, Thursdays and Fridays are better for me.
Like Thursday, February 22nd, possibly 1 month from today.
Sure.
I know it sounds like a while, but like I said, we can start helping ourselves with this process right now.
Sure. If you want to flesh out some sort of document or code or
Policy,
your
ideas.
policies,
Yeah.
and then we can collaborate on that.
Sounds good. Appreciate that. Would that be okay on your end, if you wanted to attend? Or
I
we
was
need
told
to?
I didn't have to go.
I know. Well, we
I
could.
appreciate that.
I was trying to.
I love that. No, I heard you don't need me yet.
Well, we could also have her attend by Zoom and just do it in the village offices too. So it's not like we have to drag her all the way down here.
That is winter break week.
Okay. We saying afternoon,
You mean later in the afternoon?
4-ish? Is that where we're going with
I
that?
can probably. see
Yeah, I
before.
can do 4.
4,
We can't do 5.
That would be better.
5,
I can do 5.
5,
Okay.
5. Feel like an auctioneer now. Right, or 6. So 5 o'clock on the 22nd for now is the special meeting. Well, let's do this. Can I get a motion to set a special meeting for the discussion of sidewalks located at 66 Front Street for 5 p.m. on February 22nd, 2024.
I'll make that motion.
Trustee Raymond.
I'll second.
I'll give it to Trustee Fandesa. Discussion, anybody in the crowd with any 90-second discussion or on Zoom? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. New business, virtual meeting capability for planning board, zoning board of appeals. Ben, I think this was yours.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, especially as we plan for the new budget year, that it's time to try to get that to happen. and maybe the first step would be to go out to bid or something to multiple consultants to figure out what it would take to wire that up. I mean, I know this place is gonna get renovated eventually someday, but all the equipment that could be used can be, screwed in and then unscrewed when the time comes if necessary. But it is a real deficit to not have those very important boards accessible remotely. And it'd be a shame to wait until the library gets renovated to make that happen. So I guess I'm encouraging us to move on that.
My feeling honestly is that we should not be putting anything permanent in here. My general approach or thought is that with 30 Bath Street, redoing the entire first floor for a different courtroom space, a larger courtroom space that would be multitasked as a meeting room for different boards and committees as well. And using current police area for chambers and for clerks' offices. I just think that I agree with you that resetting this equipment every time is a pain. And the issues we run into here, though, Ben, is that, for instance, when Jen does the ZAC meetings for the Zoom there to record those, she's using comp time essentially each time we have her do that. So we lose an hour of her during the day, technically, because we give an hour of her during that meeting. So you have to assume that somebody's going to be running that stuff. And I don't think Kathy's going to be well versed enough to do that. Rory and Anna, I don't think they're going to be well versed enough. Who's going to do it? Because I can't come to every meeting either, ultimately. So there are other hurdles. And then also the idea of trying to get this stuff into a more technologically stable position overall in our meetings, into a position where we don't have to reset the chairs every time and reset the technology every time, that we can walk in and have a meeting at will.
I don't see why we have to wait years, because that's what it's
Oh, no,
gonna be.
that's not a year's thing.
Yeah.
Definitely not a year's thing.
Well, if we're gonna renovate the courtroom, how long is that gonna take?
Well, first, we got to see if we can get a grant from the OCA.
So that sounds like years.
No, that's faster than that. They work faster than that. Believe it or not.
Well, yes, ideally, everything would be in place. I do think there are systems that you can set up again. You can install them, and then it's not a lot of work to unscrew them and remove them when the time comes. And you can have something that's basically a plugged-in system. You have a laptop and you plug it in, and the system, you have your microphones and everything available.
And as far as obtaining a skill set on how to operate that equipment, that is just something that's part of the job. And I'm sure there's the training that someone can give them. We shouldn't basically create a barrier from public access because someone needs to be trained up a little bit on how to use the equipment.
I understand what you're saying, but our clerk's job primarily, the buildings clerk is to clerk for those meetings. So, to me, that would be a whole different employee that would have to manage that.
I don't think so. Like at the Ballston Town Board, the clerk sets up the remote and then they do whatever, they take minutes and all the other stuff. It's not like a big job, a separate job for them to just, maybe they come a minute early.
Milton utilizes a whole separate employee to do that. The clerk is freed up to make sure the minutes are taken accurately.
So I hear you. I'll brainstorm some ideas for you. It's for hopefully in the near term. I mean, we've already been working to create scenarios that you saw the result of one of them with respect to the recorded meetings we did or interviews we did, and setting up my office even in a more professional manner with that stuff. But again, it took me managing and knowing what I'm doing with respect to that. We put a redundancy in the front office as well. So a committee like the RAC could technically do that as well now. So we're working on what we can control right now over there. So there's a meeting with only a couple things on the agenda. It might be easy for them to do it there.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought one of a consultant could say, okay, here's a setup that's user friendly. And
it's always
you're basically the tech guy for this village and you don't have to be, like. you
Well,
could-
don't we have an IT guy?
Yeah, I mean, he's not on payroll, it's a consultant.
Well,
So-
we could consult us as to what, audio visual equipment we could use that would be user friendly.
Well, maybe we could get
I'm just trying to train Jen up for the next meeting at this point, because she'll be running the AV for that one all by herself. So, this is why we actually invested in the camera, the remote camera, that I had my own version of it, so that she can go to a one camera system and not have the issues that, we have to set up all this stuff and whatnot, and still be able to do what we normally do in these meetings. So, I mean, let's get over that hurdle first, because that'll be one big step for us to get our technology a little lighter here. And then maybe we can start coming up with ideas for the other boards at that point too.
do you think that we should buy this equipment from you so it's not your?
Well, no, that camera is now, that's the village's camera. The only thing that technically belongs to me is the laptop, and we're gonna store it. So,
Oh, all this is village? I thought you bought all this.
no, this stuff is village stuff. These
Oh, okay.
are all village stuff. From my podcasting and coverage of football and whatnot, I got a good flavor for AV, and some of the stuff I tested out before ever saying the village should purchase this stuff on its
Okay.
own.
All right, so the village owns it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The computer is about the only exception right now, I think, on this table. So,
All right, so, I don't know, it'd be good to take steps.
I hear you.
So would that involve a consultant?
Let me get back
What do
to
you
you on
wanna
it. Let me talk to Jen too, because obviously she's the person that's kind of, run front and center on the tech stuff that I work on, and try to make sure she knows what's going on with it too. So let me have that aside with her, talk with
Okay.
Jeff, our IT guy,
Okay.
not related to Gary's, and we'll see
All
where we
right,
go.
so we
then.
can revisit it in the
Yeah.
future.
Okay.
Thank,
Okay, time for public comment on any issue, 3 minutes. Again, folks on Zoom, this would be a good time for you to raise your hand if you have a public comment for this portion of the program. Again, 3 minutes, and as always, respect and keeping it pointed to the board. I feel like I saw Marilyn's hand in the background. I did, and here she comes.
Yeah, because I want to get out of here. So
Listen, take us
my
with you.
granddaughter's birthday. So
Happy
Marilyn
birthday.
Stevenson, 45 West High Street. I just want to follow up on the Zoom issue. It's imperative that the planning board and the ZBA come into the 21st century and ask some of their younger members to use Zoom to make those municipal meetings available to some of us who cannot be here physically every single time. I know Bernadette serves on Town of Milton's planning board, and that is a very elaborate setup, and it's very accessible. We just need, for each one of those committees, one municipal Zoom account where we have access to schedule a meeting and issue an email for a meeting ID and a password that can be shared by planning, zoning, Board of Appeals, and any other group like the ZAC, the Zoning Advisory Committee. You need one member with a laptop, and you have a nice camera. If these are your microphones, that's all you need. The ability to hook the microphone into the main laptop that has a camera or this camera, and the ability for the microphone also to be hooked in, so whoever is speaking during the meeting, be it the board member or the public, to actually participate. I think that's all it would take. You've got a lot of younger members on those boards. When we did the comp plan committee, Scott Burlingame subbed in one time when we needed help with Zoom. So please don't think you have to spend money to make municipal meetings accessible to the public. Ask both of those boards to come into the 21st century and make it accessible to the community, because right now it is not. And you're doing a disservice to people in the community who need to know. Thank you.
we spent about a year, I would say, getting our meetings here brought into 21st century to a certain degree. I would hope that folks appreciate some of the changes, and we did some trial and error. Some of the microphones obviously weren't great, although we like the principle of them, so we went to an upgraded version of the microphones, the camera idea here, the podium there. And so, we've been testing a lot of things on us to see people's reception of it, and I think it's worked generally well. So again, we're learning, and then we can try to pass on the knowledge, et cetera, as well, to make it somewhat production value worthy too, which I think is important too. You
Yeah,
don't
the
want to look like,
learning curve doesn't have to be as steep as people think it is, because you have a lot of younger members on the committee that can help you out. They're already doing it, so tap into that potential and make it happen. Thank
Liz?
you.
I 100% agree with Marilyn, such as the zoning advisory committee. We shouldn't have to have Jen, sort of do your role there. There's plenty of younger members. What we do really need is at least one more copy of Zoom, because I think the village only has one copy. And that copy should be made available to committees and boards that meet outside. And as she said, made the equipment available. The setup's not that hard. One of the committee members, could probably easily do it. We don't have to take Jen's time to sit there and listen to the long meeting. And I think it could be done very, very easily. So I would make a request to have the village, buy another copy of Zoom.
the other thing that makes you laugh about that, not laugh, funny, ha ha, but just think it back is when I first took office, I would get these emails repetitively because my email account is the one that's tied to our Zoom account. Your meeting from blank date is about to be deleted because of lack of space. We had like maybe 5 gig of space maximum. And finally, we got Jeff to work with us to get 35 gigs, which now fills up just as fast. So again, work in progress in the respect of even working on our Zoom account. But Jen has looked through all different types of things to see if we could share it somehow. It's not that easy, unfortunately, without some security risks. And so that's why we don't just let it out willy-nilly. We just don't have the ability to do that. So that's why we keep her in charge of it for now until we can figure out some side way of handling it ultimately. So just a transparency issue there for you. Anybody else in the room? Ray? You like our new cabinet?
I like the, yeah. I like the new cabinet, yeah. It looks better than it was there. Which is that? Ray Otten, 16 Millbrook Avenue, Bremer. Three things I want to bring up. First and foremost, February 29th, mark your calendar. This is a leap year. So on leap day, the local Rotary is going to leap into the year with a chicken barbecue at the VFW, much as we did last year. We're expecting at least 500, probably closer to 600 dinners to be served. So that area up there will be a little tied up maybe, but if you're available to help, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to put you on our list. Just looking for an update on the Pulp Mill Street project.
It is moving forward. There were a couple meetings, and there's an extension of request, I believe, outstanding for DEC. Give us another 30 days to get it done. But the actual work to the pipes themselves and the face there that could have collapsed essentially is being done right now, essentially, or is supposed to be being worked on in real time. The repavement of anything that needs to be repaved won't be done until the spring, obviously, when blacktop plants reopen. So it's kind of phase one, getting the actual work, the important stuff done to stabilize and to rebuild those pipes that lead to drainage that deteriorated. And phase two is to kind of fix everything that we had to dislodge in the process to get to those pipes ultimately.
Okay, good. Thank you for that update.
You got it.
And you mentioned a word that I'd like to tie into the last thing I'm going to talk about, stabilize. We were looking to stabilize that bank.
Yep.
Because if that bank should go, there's going to be a major problem in this village, not just from an infrastructure point, but from a disaster point. Those of us who have been around for a while, and myself, especially, I live across the street from a bank of the Cateros that didn't exist when I moved in. That was all dumped in there. It was all leaves and trees and whatever people decided to throw over the bank, they did. And it was never really compressed or firmed up. It was just, they put up a fence and said, all right, no more. And so in the event of a heavy rain, that whole bank could go all the way up the street. So it's stabilizing is important. And should that happen with the upcoming flooding that could happen in the spring, the disastrous snowstorms that we could have, you mentioned this last one with what we have, all of 6 inches. It was pretty nasty out there and a lot of things could have happened. Are we any better prepared as a board to take any action should there be an incident in this village
The
of a
county,
disastrous nature?
the county actually started today, and it was unfortunately double scheduled today, so I didn't get to attend the actual meeting. But there's a set of meetings going forward for emergency preparedness going on. And I actually looked through some of the forms, and they cover what is your risk assessment for all kinds of wild things, emergency storms,
Meteorites,
landslides,
yeah.
bridge issues, things like that. But basically, the county is working right now to work with the municipalities in Saratoga County to assess the emergency preparedness, what you might need help with, ultimately infrastructure wise. So that is something at least that is being undertaken right now that I will be attending more now. I can get it scheduled correctly in the future. So yes, it's in the works in that respect.
Okay, and I will emphasize, as I have for the past 10 years probably, that I think all of our board members, and thank you, Sean, for at least taking part in some of it, should be ICS trained. It is recommended by FEMA that the village and city and town officials get ICS 100, and I think it's 200 and 700 training.
Yeah.
They're online courses. You can get them done, and at least then you'll have the knowledge of what they're talking about. And if you have to put together a scene, you're going to be the ones that are going to be in charge, so you should know what's going on. So again, I've been asking for 10 years, take the courses. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Anybody else in the room? Anybody on Zoom? I see one hand. Lori, go ahead.
Okay, hi, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to mention that this Thursday night, we're partnering with our host, Saratoga County History Museum, the Brookside, and we'll have Dan Berggren there, one of our community members. He has a incredible long history in folk music, over 50 years, and sings a lot of wonderful songs about the Adirondacks, neighbors, hardworking folks, all kinds of good stuff. He's coming to do a benefit concert for the library, and it's all just Dan's, devoted time to us, and any of the proceeds go to the library capital campaign. It's at 6:30, refreshments on Thursday night at the Brookside, and then Dan starts at 7 for his performance. Everyone's welcome. It's a $10 suggested donation, and kids are welcome. Families, bring a friend, bring your families, bring anybody. We'd love to have you there. We look forward to it, and it should be a good night out for the community. The only other thing I wanted to mention was in relation to the conversation about technology in the community room. The library board is definitely very in tune with the room that you're sitting in. And as far as the process of the library renovation, phase 3 of the library renovation would be very much considering the technology in the room and having lots of conversations with the board of trustees, especially Mayor Rossi, and whatever is needed for the room. So I just want to mention that that's definitely on our minds. We've talked with the architect a lot about that, and it's something that's a bit down the road, but not too far. as we're going into phase 1A, but I just wanted to say that glad to hear this conversation, and I want you to know that we all, we support the needs of the community and your group and, as a whole. And that's it. Have a good evening.
Name and address, please.
Sorry, 25 Eastern Ave, Ballston Spa. Thanks.
And Lori, if your next library board meeting gets snowed out, you're gonna have to at that point. I swear to you.
I know. We need a bubble. We need a little igloo.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Lori.
Thank you.
Anybody else on Zoom? Seeing none. Last call. Other business, including but not limited to board response to public comment. Anybody want to go on that?
Just quickly, we're getting to the point where we used to do department reports. Is that, I know we missed it, we skipped.
Well, we're gonna fire late in the month. I'll say that much. And I've actually been thinking about what to do for the first meeting coming up. It looks like Parks is not going to be a huge deal of any sort. I'll try to get something scheduled up for you guys in the room, at least with one of the departments. So I wanted to do, Melissa, I wanted to wait though until I have the corrected document from Bob. So that might be, what's that?
DPW, something.
I think he's best to talk to you during his workshop ultimately for budget. He's going to have a lot more ability to have direct Q&A with you because I think we get a good report from Sean. That one, I would say to you, that workshop is usually focused only on DPW when we do it. So that might be your best time.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking more for the public,
Well, we do them for public.
Most people don't.
We do record those.
Don't go to the budget workshops, but, and also there's not necessarily a overview like what we did last year kind of thing. Again, I know it takes some work to prepare the presentation, but they're very well received. And even the department head said, you know what, that's actually worth doing because it's good to think about what I did last year and lessons learned. But so I hope we can keep that going.
In coordination with budget fund, they have to think about what they did last year too. So timing wise, I think a lot of this works around that type of situation after watching this for the last couple of years play out that way. Roberta, anything? Mary? Sean?
I got one more thing.
Oh, well, you're so I'm sorry. I didn't mean to walk out on you.
But just Carl, can you clarify the remote capability because of board members to participate in board meetings? Because my understanding was we needed to pass a law, et cetera. Okay, go ahead.
I got your email. I didn't respond. I was driving today. I think you're confused because there is always been the ability for a board member to remotely participate as long as the public has the address and the ability to go and sit in the same room as the board member wherever they are and participate. That's what's happening at the next meeting with the mayor.
So
your idea of,
I just asked you, just to clarify that, when do you have to announce that or say that, or do you have to post it?
Just has to be on the notice, whenever the notice goes out.
Whenever the notice goes out?
Yep. And that's why I included that in the public hearing notice for the local law, which I realized yesterday I had to put that in there. You're thinking about the one that expires, it's 103A, that expires, I think, July of this year, perhaps, July 1st of 24, yeah. So it expires this year that says, if the board wants to hold a whole meeting via remotely, you have to have a local law doing that, where you, and let's say you and Bernadette are remote. It's because there's extraordinary circumstances. It's not because you're away and you don't want people to come. You don't want to say, hey, come to my hotel room in May, or you're something. Yeah, you're sick or something to that effect. That's different. That's a different law that came out of COVID that expires July 1st of 24. This law has always been in effect. So if you want to go to Disney World and you want people to come to like the Caribbean beach, I'm going to Disney World. Kidding.
Well, that's good to know that we can participate as board members remotely if we just tell people this is where we are and you're welcome to join me.
Absolutely. And you always have been able to, and you have to make certain though that the area you're at is ADA compliant.
Okay.
So you have to make sure that wherever you are, it's just as accessible as where the regular board meeting is.
Right.
Yeah, but that's always been.
That could be anywhere in the world.
It can be. If you want to go to Europe, I'm happy to go to Europe, Ben, and hang
And do we still need a law? It sounds like we do when this thing expires, saying we can participate remotely if we're sick and.
No, that is the law that's expiring.
But you're saying, no, but we need a local law to replace it. Didn't you say that once?
Right now, if you want to do it, that, right now, they have that law expiring. That law
Right.
says you can do remotely as long as you have a local law. That law,
Oh,
for whatever
okay.
reason, is expiring.
So we can't do a local law to keep
You
it going.
can, but I don't know what's gonna happen after July 1st. We haven't gotten, the Association of Towns, NICOM, no one has come out with any idea
I
what's
haven't heard
going on.
anything about anybody wanting to do it, but.
Right, because I think it was really, everybody wanted to do it because it had worked so well. And now a lot of people want to be back in person, so I don't think there's as much want for that. And there's no discussion that it's going to be extended, but then again, I don't know what they do down there in Albany, that's all Bernadette. So that's, if you want to though, that is on my list of local laws this year. If you want to move that one up to get it done before July, I have
Well,
2 before that.
if you don't, if you don't know it's gonna be possible
That's
after
yours.
July, it's probably not worth doing.
If they reinstate it though, it might be worth looking at, because
that
I had COVID that one
Right.
time, and,
It's-
maybe.
It's basically for if you're sick, right? You don't want.
Well, it has to
anyone in
be
your house.
extraordinary circumstances, which can't be like vacations.
Right.
And it can't be just like a cold. It has to be if they have extraordinary circumstances, and this board has to determine what those extraordinary circumstances are.
But it could be if you have contagious illness.
I would think,
Potentially.
yeah, you
Yeah. Which
should not be here.
Right, exactly. Okay, thank you.
No need for executive session tonight. Can I get a motion that vouchers be audited and meeting be adjourned at 8:46 PM? Trustee Fandesa, trustee Price Bush beat you to it. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Have a good night, everybody.
Frank, so I probably should ask this under discussion, but that large purchase, that's an emergency purchase, right? Yeah.
It should have been handled